I feel like everybody has kind of like a morbid curiosity as to other people's financial choices, especially when it comes to shopping. And this is the kind of video that I want to see from other people because I find it really fascinating as collectors how we came to acquire the collections that we have. And I've mentioned this before, 2020 was the year where I was very financially reckless with how I acquired my plants, and that was the year and into like first half of 2021 where I amassed the majority of my collection, or I would say the highest quantity of plants. Thinking back on it, a lot of it was just snap decisions. If you didn't make that decision in that moment and you weren't quick enough or your internet wasn't fast enough, you weren't getting that plant. And we're all sitting around in our houses with nothing to do, and we didn't have anywhere to go, and we weren't spending money on entertainment, so we were just shopping. So yeah, I thought it'd be fun to round up a few plants and tell you how much I paid for them. Some of these plants I spent a lot more than I should have. Some of these plants I spent about as much as I should have. Or I mean, I guess that's up for interpretation. Some of these plants I've spent far less than I should have, but I thought it'd be just fun to show you the plants, what I paid for them, and like how I came to acquire it at that price. So today I was actually supposed to film my repot and chat with answering your juicy questions, but honestly, it is 10 o'clock at night. I was in such a bad mood today. I wasn't really like up for filming that kind of a video, and if I didn't do something easy today, I wasn't gonna get a video up on Sunday again. I would have been another Monday upload. So we're gonna do an easy one today, and then I'm gonna tackle the repot next week. So I have 8 plants to show you. Maybe I'll do another one of these if you guys like it, but for today it's 8 plants, so let's just get started. Some of you might remember this guy. This is my Philodendron melanochrysum. There was a time in my life where I pretty much would have paid anything for melanochrysum. Like, they were not difficult to come by, but everybody wanted them and everybody was willing to pay for them, and I thought they were just the most beautiful plant I'd ever set my eyes on. Anytime I saw Milano, I would just try to snatch it up. I hoarded Milanos that year in 2020, and then I realized that they're a pain in the ass to grow, and then I stopped. And thank God I stopped, because they really are a pain in the ass. So this one I acquired through Jing. So Jing was importing this. I think this was from Indonesia, and I paid cost for it, I believe. And it was $150. Was it worth it? No, absolutely not. Okay, so I really did love this plant, and it did grow one nicely for me, and it was kind of like the crown jewel of my collection for a good solid 6 months, and then it just started growing what felt like a runner, and like I couldn't do anything to save it. So you might remember that I showed this plant in my most difficult houseplants video if you watched that one. I chopped that like leafless vine off, and then I got it onto a lazy pole. I put it in my living room, and I kind of just ignored it, and it looks like there's some rotten roots and some good roots in here. Sometimes with the myco, I can't tell if it's rotten or what. I just kind of look at the plant to see if it's telling me anything. It's not looking dehydrated, so I think it's fine, but that's not really the point. Yeah, I absolutely don't think that this was worth the $150. And at this point, like, they're just, you know, at any given moment, they're gonna pop up in the nursery. So they're really worth nothing like what they were worth when I purchased this. It's not even really the resale value of the plant I'm concerned about. It's just that I feel like I was a little bit led astray in how easy Milanos are to grow, because these were kind of touted as like the easiest philodendron ever. They're so easygoing, they're bomb proof, you could do anything to them and then they'll just grow beautifully. They want nothing, but it didn't turn out to be the case. So it absolutely wasn't worth $150. That kind of price when it came to uncommon plants, especially in the height of COVID, was really nothing. But even that was too much for this plant. If I were to wind back the clock, I probably, most definitely, wouldn't have done that again. It looks like it's doing that leafless vine thing again, so that's super cool. This is a plant that was incredibly popular in 2020 and early 2021, I would say, but especially in 2020, these were quite hard to find because for a little while there, Equigenera and Equiflora weren't exporting and they weren't doing orchid shows, and like it was really hard to get imports in, and borders were closed and all that. So getting a warocqueanum in 2020 was extremely difficult. So this is a green form Anthurium warocqueanum. I got this one, I would say mid 2020. Okay, so it's not a straight price I paid for this. This was kind of like a back and forth trade. I had purchased a plant on an auction, which I paid way too much for it. It was an Anthurium medium silver, and I paid $180 for it or something like that. I had won it in an auction over someone who really, really wanted that plant. So I was like, okay, I will trade you a cutting of this plant. And then she offered a couple of plants that was on my wish list. And then it was a back and forth trade. And then I ended up selling some of the propagations from the plants that I got from her. So all in all, this cost me $2, which is not bad, right? Granted, it was nowhere near this big when I got it. It was extreme rehab. It was maybe a portion of a leaf, maybe about this big. It was like chopped off the bottom, and it was, I think, a bottom cut, and then it was barely rooted. And it's been a process, but I'm not saying like this is like absolutely magnificent now, but it's like it's gotten a lot bigger. I was really, really happy to get it at that time. It was like a dream come true to get this plant in 2020 for me, and I was like babying it like crazy. It was another one of my like pride and joy plants. Now I feel like nobody wants to sell queens for very cheap because they put so much blood, sweat, and tears in it, but also at the same time, nobody's paying good money for it either. So I wouldn't say this is worth much, but it's a classic Anthurium. I'll always keep this in my collection. I'm not getting rid of it ever. It's staying with me. So I am incredibly happy. I feel like that was the point that really sparked my love of trading, because it was like, I loved the idea that like it was such a win-win situation for two people to get their dream wish list plants without spending like barely any money. So surprisingly, this would have been a plant that I would have paid good money for that year, but I'm super glad I didn't. Okay, and then the next one, I need to preface this with one plant I need to tell you about. I think this was in the fall of 2020. Charmaine and I split quite a large specimen of a Monstera deliciosa Brazilian common form, and we chopped it up into a few pieces. I gave a couple of stump cuttings away. Like I gave one to Erin, I gave one to Jing, and I kept some babies to grow out as propagations, and then I kept the top cutting for myself, which I repotted in a previous video, and it's doing fine, by the way. If you're wondering, that plant has survived. It's rooting like beautifully. It's on its second leaf now, which is amazing. But anyway, that plant and the babies I was able to trade for some plants that were high on my wish list. So the first one is this Anthurium windlingeri. It's not looking its best, but I have high hopes for it. It's doing fine. It's not dying or anything. It's just a little bit warped. And I think this is a CalMag issue. Anyone who's growing windlingeri, maybe you can tell me why it does this leaf curl thing. I mean, I'm pretty sure that was the reason why I did this. I bumped the CalMag, but I think I have been a little bit too lazy on the CalMag recently. So the previous leaf grew in much more straight and flat, but this newest one is curling in at the sides. It's not thirsty, it's just hardening off this way. But yeah, I traded this, I think Christmas 2021. I had grown out a baby prop of the Brazilian common form, and I traded this. I was so ecstatic to get this plant, and I still am ecstatic to have this plant. This is one of my most favorite plants in my entire collection. It's the plant, one of the plants where I'm like the most emotionally invested into growing out to maturity. This is never leaving my collection, by the way. I do plan on chopping it at some point and like trading propagations with Charmaine, but you know, this is like far in the future kind of thing. So I paid $0 for it. But if you want to be nitpicky and say like, how much did I pay for the Brazilian common form? I paid, I think it was about $175 for my half of that plant. So I still have that plant. So I traded a stump cutting that had grown a leaf. So is it $0? Is it $20? You can interpret that for yourself. But yeah, of all the poor decisions I made, this was one of the good decisions. And then the other plant that I traded a cutting of that Monstera for was my Philodendron Florida Beauty. Obviously it didn't look like this when I got it. I got it almost 2 years ago. So it was a 2-leaf cutting. Probably the biggest leaf was about this size. Yeah, it struggled for a long time and it's doing amazingly now. Like I cannot believe, like look at this plant. I think this needs to be a thumbnail. When I did that trade, this plant was probably one of my top wish list plants at the time. I was trying to get this plant. This was one of the plants where I was like on the hunt for. I was trying to figure out trades with somebody else that fell through, and I was trying to buy this plant and I couldn't ever find a great specimen. But my friend at the time had like a farm of these, and I was like, do you want to trade? And he's like, yeah. And he had like just Florida beauties coming out of his ass. So it was really not much to him and it wasn't much to me. So it was like a great win for both of us. I don't think I realized at the time how much joy this plant would have brought to me like 2 years later. But it really honestly brings me so much joy. It's such a good grower for me. I mean, I cannot ask for a better plant with this. So this plant cost me $0. And I can't believe it. I would have paid good money for a Florida Beauty, to be honest. And while we're here, can we just take a look at how fat the stem is getting? So I'm trying not to hit the mic, but it's gonna be really hard not to hit the mic. So the stem here, the juvenile stem is like this thickness, but look at it at the top. I'm gonna come on. I don't know how I'm gonna show you this. I don't know if I can show you this. Oh, can I maybe like this? It's getting girthy, and the newest leaf is just unfurling. I think it got a little bit too close to the light, but the shape of it is just starting to get all weird and funky. It's, ugh. This is one of the best plants in my whole collection. I'm so in love with this plant. Even 2 years later, I think I've had this plant for about 2 years. I've cut it a few times since I got it, but now I'm very invested in growing it into giant trees. So it's not even like, the internals are kind of tight anyways for me to chop this plant. So I don't plan on chopping it anytime soon. I'm just gonna try to grow it as big as I can. But yeah, this was one of the good decisions. So in 2021, I did a lot of importing through Jing's business, just like joining in on her orders for her business. And I ordered a lot of like Anthuriums from Indonesia. I think they were all from Indonesia actually. So Jing's kind of like the group accountant. Like she was just so gracious in just allowing us to join her business orders anyways, and it was just really nice. I mean, I definitely have some stories to tell from, you know, all those orders we've made and how we found sellers and stuff like that. And I'm planning to tell it in my next repot and chat, but the next few are going to be plants from those Indonesian orders. Let's do my Anthurium luxurians. This one was actually from Indonesia and not from, I'm pretty sure it's from Indonesia, not from Thailand. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. It was definitely from Asia. And this was not from Equigenera. So when I imported this with Jing, this was probably spring of 2021. Luxurians was not yet available through Equiflora, Equigenera. It was really, really hard to come by. I could only ever find it on like American plant groups. So I really wanted one. I wanted one so badly, and like I was really big on Anthuriums then. I took a little break and then now I'm back into Anthuriums again, but all I wanted then were Anthuriums. Like all I cared about was Anthuriums, all I wanted to buy were Anthuriums, and this was one of them. So this one came as a seedling size, like seedling-ish size. The biggest leaf was maybe like this big, on the plant, and there were a bunch of like tiny little like spade-like seedling sized leaves that, you know, like when luxurians are super juvenile, they're almost silver. So I paid about 300 Canadian dollars for this. I feel like at the time it was a pretty good deal, and it was a good deal because of the size of the plant. Now I think you can get a luxurians landed for about $200 Canadian. If I had held out a little bit longer, I would have gotten it for a much better price, and I probably would have gotten a bigger specimen too. But you know what? You win some, you lose some. I couldn't wait. I seized the chance when I saw one, and it was just like right in front of me, so I paid what I paid. But I don't regret it because I honestly adore this plant. It's just such a classic Anthurium, and it's just, I find one of the most beautiful Anthuriums in existence. Like, come on, look at those lobes and that texture. It's just wonderful. The emergent leaf is like bronzy, and then it has this like shiny green that hardens to this like blackish, bluish green. It's just so, so beautiful. And the petioles, I'll always be a sucker for like a square petiole or like a 8-sided petiole or frilly petiole. So yeah, this one, medium good, medium bad decision, but I do not regret it. This one is a funny one. So this was sold to me at the time as an Anthurium Ace of Spades crossed with a Dark Mama. I'm pretty sure the only thing that is true about any of that is the Papillilaminum. So I'm calling this just a Pappy hybrid, and it's not much to look at because this plant, okay, so when I first got it, it was much bigger. I'm gonna throw up a photo right here of what it looked like. It was just, oh, it's so stunning. It was like dark, super almost blackish dark, and it had like the most beautiful elongated leaves. All the leaves are very narrow, and then the lobes got super tall. It's kind of puffy. It's absolutely stunning. And unfortunately I got stem rot, so I grew it back from like a stem that I had to like shave half of it off, so it was like vertically half of the stem. I'm so glad it came back, but it's looking like it's got root rot again. Yeah, we're gonna have to do some emergency rehab on this plant, but I'm seeing a bunch of good roots and just some dead roots. It's in trouble again, but I paid roughly $250 for this plant. And then later on, I purchased another one from the same seller for about $400 Canadian. It was much bigger. I ended up selling that one because I realized after buying it that I could not afford it. So I had propagated it to try to keep one for myself, but in the end I had to sell both of them because I had to recoup my expenses because I was a little bit too reckless. I was coming to that realization. So yeah, this one is an unknown Pappy hybrid from Indonesia. I have no intentions of selling this because I know what this plant can become. So I am going to do my utmost to try to nurse it back to that size because it was such a beautiful, beautiful plant. Oh, and do I regret it? I'm gonna say no. I did end up regretting that larger one, so I did sell that one, although that one was absolutely stunning as well, but it just, I couldn't justify both of them. But this little guy, I wish it had grown a little bit better for me. I wish it hadn't rotted so many times, but no, I don't regret it. So this one is my Anthurium Dark Phoenix, which I think people have come to accept that name for this plant. It was originally sold as a Papillilaminum Dressleri, and then it was just too long to pronounce, so my friends and I just called it puppy dress. And then it became apparent that it didn't have Dressleri in its parentage because just the petioles are way too round. It would have inherited the Dressleri petioles had it been one of its parents, but it's not, or it's not believed to be one of its parents. So it was then called like an Indo-Pappy or just a Papillilaminum, but then I think people just accepted the name Dark Phoenix to refer to this specific clone of Pappy from Indonesia. All that to say, I acquired this in spring of 2021 as a tiny, tiny seedling size. So the biggest leaf was smaller than this one here. And it was just a tiny, tiny baby. I found this seller on Indonesia. I found the seller on Instagram, and then I just basically begged him to export it to Canada, and he did through a friend of his who's actually a seller. And it took like a couple of months. It was just such an ordeal, but finally it got to me, and I've loved it ever since. And I knew about this plant first from Jing. So she had been sold a Dark Phoenix from one of her suppliers as the wrong ID. I think at the time the seller was IDing it as like an ace of spades or something like that, because that was what was getting a higher price at the time, which worked out really well in Jing's favor. So she got a Dark Phoenix for quite a good price because this plant wasn't in demand at the time. So we couldn't get any more from that seller, but I had like hunted down this other seller to buy it from. But anyway, I paid with shipping and conversion and taxes. There's no taxes. Was there taxes? There's no taxes. Shipping, conversion, and like PayPal fees and whatever. Everything in landed about $250. Wait, is that right? That's wrong. I paid about $350 Canadian for this plant. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is probably one of my most favorite plants in my entire collection. Definitely one of my favorite anthuriums. Like it's my perfect plant. Like I don't know what else to say. It's so beautiful, and it's one of the plants that I cannot wait to grow out and just see it have babies, and it's just so beautiful. Like it's just like everything I want in an anthurium. It's pillowy, it's kind of bullate, it's dark, it's got lobes, it's elongated, it's shimmery, and it's holographic in some lights. If you are to spend money on any anthurium that's not like insanely priced, this is one that I would recommend. So $350, no regrets. And I've been seeing lately pictures of a red sinus Dark Phoenix, and it is very high on my wish list. I want to track one down. I don't know how I'm gonna get one. I don't plan on importing anytime soon, so it's not a wish list plant I expect to acquire ever. Probably never, unless like some start to crop up or if I decide to import again. But yeah, this is probably the best plant I imported that year in 2021. Maybe ever. Maybe ever. So the last plant, I don't really like talking about how much I paid for this. This is my Philodendron heterocraspidon. I imported this in 2021. When would it have been? Winter, like early in the year, I think. It was maybe January or February, something like that. It was very early in that year, and it was like a plant that I never thought I would own. I thought it was just like the most beautiful thing. I'm gonna actually throw up the photo of the plant. When I first got it, it had like the most beautiful, beautiful long leaf. It had this like satiny feeling to it. It was still not fully hardened when I got it, so it still had the red abaxial, and it was everything to me, and I couldn't believe that I had it in my possession. This was probably right at the beginning of when Equiflora was starting to sell heterocraspidon. It wasn't available before then, and they had like, basically this one was one of like the mother plants or something. Like it was one of the few plants where he was selling a specific plant of like, he would show you like this plant, and he was doing this through Messenger with Jing, and it was originally, I think he quoted like $700 US or something, and then Jing was like, no thanks. And then I think it just like ended up on her invoice, or he was like, okay, fine, like this price, like something way cheaper. So she was like, okay, fine, I'll take it. And that was like on my behalf. So this plant I paid $590 Canadian for. And it hurts to see them so cheap. Like they were maybe $125 a year later or 6 months later. So it was not my favorite thing to see. This was definitely one of the instances where I definitely should have been a lot more patient And it has taught me to be more patient with these plants, especially if it's coming out of Ecuador. The prices will come down. It's like pretty much a guarantee. So I definitely learned my lesson, but you know what? It happens, I guess. I don't love that it happened to me, but that was my decision. I have to own it. But yeah, I luckily had a successful propagation from this plant, and I was able to trade that with Charmaine, and she gave me a cutting of her Patriciae. So we each got a cutting of a wishlist plant for both of us, and then now I have a Patriciae and a Heterocraspedon, and I love both plants. I love them very much, but this one's not doing so great because it's currently potted in Killer Pond, which I mentioned in my last video, my alocasia video, if you miss it. I will be getting this out of a Killer Pond in my hopefully next video when I repot all the Killer Pond plants and get it into something a little less lethal. But basically Killer Pond has killed a bunch of my plants and is currently killing a bunch of my other plants by just burning them all with nutrients. So anyway, so this is my last plant. Do I regret it? Yes, I will say I regret it. I mean, I don't really regret anything in life, if I'll be honest. Like, there's very few things I really regret, but this one did teach me to be patient. And if we're talking about, like, you know, if we were to do everything over again, would we be as reckless with our purchasing? Like, if you watched my chatty video with Charmaine, we're talking about like managing a large collection and like how we were just like rage buying plants in all of 2020 and 2021. And like whether, you know, we regret doing that or whatever, but honestly, like I don't think I would have really learned my lessons on acquiring plants and things like that had I not made those mistakes, or had I not done things that maybe weren't the best decisions at the time. So I wish I hadn't, but I guess I don't super regret it, because if I hadn't done that, I probably would have done that with another plant. Yeah, if there's anything you can take away from this video, just if it's a plant offered by like Equigenera, Equiflora, and it's very expensive and it's like the first release, like just hold on. If you really want the plant and you don't want to pay a lot for it, just wait, because chances are the prices are going to come way down, and you're going to be a lot happier for it, and your bank account's going to be a lot happier for it as well. And that concludes the list for today. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, if you want to do a continuation of it. I am definitely down to do another one. I tried to pick plants. I mean, I did pick plants this time that like it wasn't a gift or anything, because that would be kind of boring. All of the $0 ones were trades, and the very cheap ones were trades, or like trades back and forth. And if you do want me to do another one of these videos, let me know if there's any particular plant in my collection you're wondering how much I paid for, and I'll make sure I add that to the list. Next week's gonna be the repot and chat. Don't worry, I've saved all the questions. There were a lot of really juicy ones and just a lot of questions in general, so I won't be able to get to all of them, but I picked some. Maybe I'll make it into a multiple part repot, because goodness knows I have a lot of repotting to do. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to give it a like if you did. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Mwah.